Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
Choosing a bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink that's all flavor and just 100 calories? Easy. Choosing between creamy vanilla, double chocolate, and sea salt caramel flavors? A little harder. Try the delicious new Starbucks Frappuccino light drinks. Look for them wherever you buy groceries. Start with Starbucks coffee.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
It's really cool.
Bonjour, hello, and welcome to the Rosbif Rugby podcast, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby, the top 14, Pro de National, French national team, Les Bleus, the Champions Cups, Challenge Cups, and most importantly, the brilliant towns, cities, bars, restaurant, food, stadiums, fans, everything that makes French rugby so fantastic. I'm joined bright and early as ever by Rob, who's repping some very natty crockery there. Is that a bit of horse racing themed?
Yeah,
look at that.
That's my favourite.
That's stunning. Looks, I actually think sort of heirloomy, I'm going to say.
Do you know what? It was from when my mum worked at PDSA charity shop in Ryde on the Isle of Wight. So it's probably the opposite end. I think it's like a £4 mug.
When a young Rob was constantly down local William Hill, and she thought, this would be the perfect gift.
I thought you were talking about my jumper, because this is the other good jumper after last week. To be fair, the Pro de final, two best bits of stash going head to head, or my stash.
That is what matters. That is what matters. How have you been? What's news?
Yeah, fine. Nothing to write home about, other than the absolutely wild game of cricket that I played on Saturday, but you've already heard about that. But I'm more interested about you, mate. Fun. You weren't playing cricket because you were out and about. How are you? How is the post-trip blues coming along?
Yeah, the post-trip blues is fine. Yeah, it was, but had a lovely trip. As I mentioned kind of last week, I think, on the pod. Very last minute decision to get one of, I think, 2 weekly flights to Brive to go and principally watch their semi-final game. But yeah, had a lovely time. Did a slightly detour on the way back. Was able to use a dusty BA voucher to get a cheapish flight back from Bordeaux. So kind of changed my plans ever so slightly and went to a few spots and had a very, very nice time, it must be said. First time I've done anything kind of solo for a very long time. I think probably kind of post university, a couple of work trips, but they don't really count. And quite enjoyed it. The pace of just going alone. Yeah, all very 4 agreeable.
Hours early and not having anyone complain about
not missing trains and getting yobbed for it. So yeah, no, it was very nice. I'm sure we'll sprinkle throughout some insights from the trip.
What was the big highlight? Just before we go into the finer details, what's the headline news?
I mean, it's hard to look past the Stade Amédée-Domenech.
Talk us through your itinerary first, because I'm hazy on it. So
okay, all right. So the itinerary was they landed in Brive. So I had one night in Brive for the rugby for the big game at Stade Amédée-Domenech. Next morning it was across to the train between kind of Brive and Bordeaux. I think there are usually direct trains, but there was definitely a bit of local train mischief going on. So like when we went before and the direct train to Toulouse wasn't there. Otherwise I would have potentially had a look at the Cass game. So I had made a few kind of pit stops en route to break that journey. So went to Périgueux, which obviously we went to earlier in the year, but only kind of had a look at the rugby ground. So stopped off there for a couple of hours. Then went on to Saint-Emilion and had a little look around one of the chateaux and a bit of the town. And then finally into Bordeaux for the evening on the Saturday. And then Sunday had a good mooch around. Nearly bought myself a copy of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 for the PlayStation 1 in a flea market, but opted against on this occasion. And then off to AS Merignac versus Cahors in the Fédéral de Troyes. Fédéral something first leg quarter-final. So yeah, had a very enjoyable time. It was round a fair bit in, and it was becking boiling the first 2 days, but survived it, marched on, trooped through, heroic stuff, Rob.
Was it it looked pretty hot judging by some of the games this week. What was Saint-Emilion like? Did you do wine tasting at the chateau then?
Yes, yeah. Went to, so it's called Chateau Fromine, I think it's pronounced. It's like Frank Maine in Rosbif terms. So did a little tour around there, which is about a half an hour walk from the town itself. Tour great, very interesting. Little tour of the kind of underground cellars that they kind of age the wine in, which was really cool. Although there were I'll come back to it in a minute. It's quite an interesting tour party. And then onto the town itself, which was incredibly beautiful, but, and I say this obviously as somebody who was visiting from out of town, incredibly touristy, very small, and the sort of place I imagine maybe in the winter would be quite cool. And there are obviously wine shops there that would, if you drop them into anywhere else in the world, or one popped up on your local high street, you'd be there in a flash. But when there's 35 of them next to each other, it's all a little bit overwhelming and full of a lot of tourists.
How big is Saint-Emilion?
It's tiny,
like smaller than Aix-en-Provence.
Oh yeah, like it's tiny. Like you walk around it in minutes.
Oh wow,
big village type thing.
Oh really? Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, really quite small. Perhaps I don't know. Perhaps there was some tucked away bit I couldn't see that's massive and more metropolitan, but it was very much kind of a tourist.
I always assumed it was a proper town. I've never been, despite having been.
Very
very
pretty
6 times now.
I wouldn't say. I certainly wouldn't say don't go, but I wouldn't. I was at one point looking at maybe do I get a train like 3 hours later, and I'm glad I didn't. It was enough, time. At least it was roasting as well, so I was kind of like, I want to get out of here.
What was the wine? Was it just red? The wine? How are the wines?
It was.
How do they compare
very
trip to Libourne earlier in the year?
Yeah, it was a similar. The kind of tasting scenario is very similar, in that they start with the quite young table wine type thing that
Tuesday night wine.
People, the Thursday morning wine. So that was, but they were lovely. Finished with the last glass was like a 2002, so pretty smoky stuff. But yeah, really good. Just like they've obviously got
older than Teo Atasogbe and Mathis Ferte and Leo Carbonneau.
Yeah, that's exactly how every single wine was referred by as well. There was some niche like French under 17s referenced. And
it's interesting because this one's actually older than John Etchegaray.
There was one guy there. So the tour group, there were like this German family of 4. There were a couple of, I think they were Australian girls who were probably like on a gap year, I'd imagine. And this very, very, I would assume, don't judge a book by its cover, but very wealthy Dutch couple. And obviously, it wasn't hugely expensive. You don't get loads of
that sounds like the recipe.
That
feels like a start of like a White Lotus or something like that.
Yeah, and a sweaty bloke who needed to watch some rugby and was dying in the heat. So anyway, this This Dutch guy, yeah, he was very much the question master. He was the one sort of posing a few challenging barb, the tour guide.
Seen a chateau before and wants to
wants
to dive into the detail.
And you don't get masses of wine, and it's to your own taste. So if you don't like it, so be it. But as they did when we went in January, it was if you don't want to drink it, if you want to pour it away, spit it out, here's your spittoon. Old mate, like everyone else was as you would because you paid for it, and it's a very small sample of wine. Drinking it, this guy could not resist letting his displeasure at a couple of the earlier wines known, and just had to make a massive deal of pouring certainly the first one away, and then the third one, which was I thought was it was. If not like totally my cup of tea, it was so kind of complex and interesting. You couldn't help but want to drink it. There was some comment there that it was still, this thing was older than two of the people in the room, and yet to old mate, it needed longer. It was just like it was like something out of a comedy sketch. And you could tell that the two Australian girls were absolutely like howling and trying to keep it together because they had the first one, which was just like a very soft, easy red wine. And we're like, oh yeah, that's really agreeable. And then, old mate was turning his nose up. Like it was so funny. Not sure whether or not they were off to watch Aurillac the next day and see Aurillac's Dutch contingent.
Yeah, maybe.
Dombury. Yeah, it was hilarious. It was I don't know what was worth more, like his watch or his partner's jewelry. And then there was me with my like backpack bobbing around. But it was very, very funny. And they're just very beautiful places. I'll get some photos up at some point. Yeah. But good fun.
Right, let's get into the main event then. Talk us through match day, Stade Amédée-Domenech, pre-game, Tom Raffy smoking cigs, etc. The pre-match ball outside.
Yeah. So first things first, got to the airport and shared a cab with Stephen, who's an expat. I don't know if is that the term or
yeah, I think that's fine.
Antiquated, isn't it? But lives out there now. Saw his Brive hoodie on the plane and managed to share a taxi with him and a French lady, which was handy because it was like €50, so that worked out very well.
It's very helpful.
Stephen then said, "Oh, there's like a little bar around the corner here. Think he's going to take me to some sort of off the track, like lovely little spot." Turn the corner. Oh, here it is, La Watson Irish Bar, which actually, it must be said, was very good and definitely the place to be before the match. Like lovely courtyard out the front. Everyone there was clearly in for the game. So yeah, Stephen, great guy if you're listening. Thoroughly pleasant meetup. And yeah, so off to the game. Tom Raffy and a few of the other Brive youth were on the Marlboroughs, which was quite funny and looked fairly worse for wear later, it must be said. A little bit of pétanque en route, which was fun. It was who was it? Charente.
Okay, yeah.
It was but it was going on after the game. It was like a test match. It was like a ball test match.
Nice.
So that was quite cool.
Sharon, that would be our boys technically.
Yeah.
Saxby affiliated.
Yeah, they play in blue though, so not
Les
sure
Violettes.
what the story is there. But anyway, game itself, match day, it was bouncing. It was. The place was heaving, as you'd expect, but they'd gone all out. There was it was cheerleaders. It was like these kind of circus dancing girls on stilts. It was like full works. Yeah, I think when we went last time, we were not underwhelmed, but maybe not totally enamoured by Brive as a stadium. And I think this probably dispelled that for me.
Nice.
Yeah, it was pumping. And then, yeah, the game itself, it was...
it looked pumping on TV. Like certainly pre-game, it quieted down a little bit by half-time.
Well,
but
yes,
but pre-game, it looked really, really rowdy.
It was. The only thing that quelled that rowdiness were the pre-game fireworks as they came out, which all of us were basically... I don't know how many combined years of life have been taken off by inhaling, but just covered in like bits of white and black I don't know, pyrotechnic plastic, choking, coughing, where we were all stood. Could just about see the posts by about the 3rd minute of the game. So that was, maybe a little bit of work needed there.
It was one of the more aggressive smoke thing. I don't know what you call it.
Smoke thing is what I call it.
Yeah, that I've ever seen. I did get a snap of it on the screen. I was going to try and get something up. So Richard Croney's little black and white stunt has gone a little bit too wrong here, or something like that. Like because it looked like it genuinely looked like a kind of bomb had gone off or something.
I don't know if you can see this. It was quite something. I'm glad that came across on watching it as well. But it was pretty. Pretty small.
You can't even see the next stand.
No, you can't.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So the game itself, I think probably most people listening will know that Montauban prevailed, well, pretty comfortably at the end. What was the final score? 29-30? And it was pretty extraordinary in the sense that I genuinely don't think there was a single person, maybe by the Montauban team, that thought that was going to happen. It was, and I haven't watched it back, but to me, it felt like, Brive were incredibly disjointed.
Yeah.
I think discipline, but not just in the sense of, a few yellow cards and a bit of pushing and shoving. Discipline in the sense of like patience, willingness to go through phases, discipline at the scrum. This was a sort of classic, in the first half at least, case of where it was blindingly obvious that they had the massive nudge in the scrum, but just couldn't bring themselves to
keep it in their pants, basically.
Exactly. Very similar to that Cass Northampton quarter-final where they just couldn't control it. And and Montauban were outstanding. Like, we spoke a lot about Jerome Bosviel, but this almost felt like his sort of defining opus as a Pro D2 legend. Just the variety of his kicking game. It felt like they just had a bit of a plan for everything. They were far more pragmatic. Ultimately, the two tries come from the ball, balls getting knocked back, both from Brive and apart, like a really poorly executed sort of pass backwards when the ball's bobbling on the floor. So it wasn't like they created loads, but they had those two chances. They took them brilliantly with a little bit of luck. They just had I don't know. It's hard to describe. And as you said about the second half, it was one of those games where they went for the big kind of 7-1 bench, didn't they? Brive, and it all comes on. They roll over a driving wall, and there was that kind of sense of inevitability that at some point it's got to happen. But that was it. They never really created anything, bar a bit of forward dominance for the first 50 minutes. It never felt like I'd be surprised if they went through more than 5 phases at any point in the game, or at least that's how it felt, kind of watching in the corner. And it was the atmosphere in the ground afterwards, at least from the Brive side. The Montauban fans gave it as good as they got. They were amazing, absolutely amazing. But people were like crestfallen, and understandably so. It just couldn't have gone more against the script. It was quite remarkable to be there. I don't know if from your angle, with a bit of commentary and seeing bits of it, there's probably a slightly more technical view.
The commentary was, because obviously Joe Worsley was working. It was Dan Bigger, who had never seen, wasn't aware of Jerome Bosviel. I don't know how much Pro D2 he watches, but it was quite clear that he'd never seen him play before, but it was also absolutely blown away by Jerome Bosviel. He was like, I'm getting this guy's poster on my wall. He's got to be playing top 14 next year. I was like, this guy's 35. He's never played outside, like, above Pro D2. I'm not sure, like, if Montauban aren't getting promoted, I don't think Jerome Bosviel is being snapped up by Clermont. Like, Racing's playmaker hole is going to be taken by Jerome Bosviel. I can't see it myself. He was magical though. He was because we gave him the big build up before the semi and the barrage game, and the balls. He's mastered the balls now, mate. That's the clear thing. But yeah, the variety of his kicking, the length of his kicking. Yeah. I think at least one penalty that they got came from a spiral bomb, which just, they looked kind of hapless under the high ball, I think it has to be said. Yeah. Bosch and Dreedy. I think the 7-1 bench, that immediately sent a bit of a... I never thought Montauban were going to win it. Like, I was actually thinking, because at some point we're going to have to do our review of look at our predictions and throughout the season and I remember like after we went to watch Brive back in September, I think I said I can't see a final that doesn't involve Brive, and I still kind of think that. Like, I still kind of can't believe that that Montauban team has done that. I think it was a bit of a shame. Like, I was really, because I've not seen much of Ferté at 9. I've seen him at like in the outside backs, and I love him, but I was kind of didn't get to see much. And I think that probably points to the fact that, as you say, they didn't actually piece together any phases. So you don't get him on 5th phase kind of darting around the fringes, or what can we create, that sort of thing. Carbonneau was very good when he came off the bench, and Ferté actually slotted back into the wing or fullback and looked pretty decent. But yeah, it was weird because they were kind of talking about like Stuart Olding not being a regular 10, but he is. At Brive, he has been a fairly regular 10. I think it's weird, like, as someone who didn't quite set the tone particularly well in my own game of cricket on Saturday, the Kerwin Bosch miss basically in front of the sticks early on set the tone. And it's amazing the kind of impact that sort of thing can have on a team, I think. They were just very disappointing. They did have a lot of power. Is it Sadragu in the number 8 like just dropped loads. Courtney Laws was the best player on the pitch for them, which I know seems
100%
quite Rosbify, but brilliant. And yeah, I think Brive still can't quite come head around it.
No,
they butchered a lot, and like they just let Montauban into the game at a lot of points. I don't necessarily think Montauban they executed their game plan. I think Zabalza is really good at 9 as well, not just Bosviel, but you can have a 10 that's that good, that's dictating play and coming up with all that stuff. He's got to have some sort of platform. He's got to have stuff to work with from his pack. And I actually think some of the guys in that played really well. I think Ringay was really good again, like very, very active. I thought really badgery point this, but Kanika in the second row stopped a lot of the driving mauls from Brive that got turned over and kind of given to Montauban as scrums. That was largely Kanika and the front row being right in the middle of those mauls, and just like a phenomenal just strength, like just raw world's strongest man type farmer strength. Yeah. And they executed their game plan. You're right, they didn't play that much. Was there anyone that perhaps you kind of hadn't seen before that impressed you, or anyone?
You mentioned him there, Ringay. 7 was brilliant. I know you mentioned him once or twice before. I hadn't really seen much of him. He was everywhere, like just absolutely everywhere. He was fantastic. And I thought, the 8 Noche was decent. But yeah, it wasn't. You're right in the sense that it was the execution of a game plan as opposed to any dominance anywhere, and that is no way like an insult to Montauban, because it was like their game plan was perfect. It was pragmatic, and I think Brive were a bit outthought. One quick thing on the sort of 7-1 bench was this was going to like stitch a team up at some point. I'm not aware that Brive have ever done this before, and it's easy after the fact, and it's not the sole reason they lost by any stretch. But the irony of it was that by the end of that game, their pack was getting absolutely minced, and I think it summed up the final play. They'd been driven off the ball, and it was a classic kind of. It felt to me like one of those scenarios where actually what they needed, and I don't know who this person would have been, and I know they've got versatility in their backs with Ferté and Bosch and Olding, which maybe makes that 7-1 a little bit more viable, but they needed something to spark them, and there was nothing, because they pulled everyone off.
Well, it looked like that could have been very temporarily. It looked like that could have been Carbonneau at one
point. But it needed to be more than that, and it's almost. And as just a kind of final word, as a place, when you fly into Brive Airport, like within the airport, it's CA Brive everywhere. Like every shop is flags, merch, like everyone in that town, taxi driver saying you might struggle to get somewhere to eat tonight because they'll be closed watching the game. Like it's almost inconceivable that club is not in the top 14. And I'm sure they'll come again, and I'm sure they'll be favourites probably next year. But
signings, aren't there?
It was quite incredible.
Also, we have to point out, because I don't think it was mentioned at all on commentary, this Montauban team were so, I know we say it every week, were so close to getting relegated this time last year. 1 year on from a late try to snatch a 1-point win away at Narbonne to prevent them going into National. 1 year on, they are dominating on the scoreline and comfortably beating essentially a top 14 team away from home in a semi-final. Just fair effort from Sebastian Tiller's board, who was very good at the back end of last season with Rouen. He also looks his designer stubble is top. I have to say, unbelievable.
That was in my notes. Actually, Tilly's board looking phenomenal is genuinely what I've got here.
7th biggest budget, so not kind of complete no-hopers, but 6 players played in that access match last year, or 6 players from the 23 played in that access match. So a decent enough chunk. Quite a turnaround, to be fair, but in terms of squad turnover. But yeah, brilliant effort from Montauban. And they have another free hit, basically, because no one's going to fancy them for that one. I cannot see that Grenoble side, because they absolutely dismantled Provence. They were amazing, weren't they? Properly dismantled them. They were the better team by a country. It was one of the more one-sided first halves of a semi-final I can remember. Yeah. They were just better in every single facet, and as much as the forwards were amazing, the back line were also amazing. I thought Davis was incredible. Trieu and Fousier in the centres. We'd known that they're a good combo and they work well together. My God, when you see them across the full 80, do they work well together, and they kind of do simple things very, very effectively. They're also really bloody physical, like as a pairing. I thought Wilfred Halleux was incredibly active. I thought he was just a kind of wiry, good finisher, but actually much more. He's got some Jack Nowley bits in there, isn't he? Just gets active, but they were brilliant. Shout out to Piazzoli's lid, though. Absolutely unreal. I do think so we should say that Grenoble were just completely dominant at the Stade des Alps. That looked like a proper. To think that is second division of any sport in any country is wild, because that was a proper sellout. That looked incredible. Do you have any thoughts on... I've got a few thoughts ahead of next week, but have you got any thoughts on that game in particular?
No, not beyond what you've said. It was... I didn't watch all of it, but I saw most of the first half and I saw a decent chunk of the second. And yeah, I was not expecting it to be that one-sided, not because Grenoble...
I'd like to make it clear that I said Provence had no chance of winning that. I'd like to make that clear that I said that last week.
Well done.
Well done, me.
But I didn't think Provence would get beaten up quite as much as they did, because they're a physical side and they've got some big boys and experienced players. Yeah, they were great. Silly is the man who doubts Montauban, but I can't see next week being anything other than a pretty comfortable win for Grenoble.
I think sorry, I've just seen in my notes, Baptiste Couillou was in the crowd, and I remembered that very, very briefly up on screen in the Brive game, they showed what I assume was Cedric Haymans. It's one of those things where you see someone, like, I recognise that bloke, he's famous, he's a rugby player. It took me a while, because he looks quite a bit older, as he would, but he was always quite a chunky player, Cedric Haymans. He looks like a former rugby player, chunky. You know, like when you see like a bloke that's like probably patron.
Was he wearing like a flowery shirt?
Possibly, yeah.
Because there were loads of blokes there who looked like old rugby players in like Eden Park, like floral numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about next week is that it's Montauban can try and pull off that game plan, and as much as they defended well at Maul and stuff like that, and they defended well generally, and Bosviel, but kick them around the park, they are coming up against another brilliant game manager who is basically like Bosviel but with bells. Like it's
international pedigree.
Well, he's got like the running game. Like Bosviel doesn't have that Sam Davis running game that Sam has shown throughout the season, of kind of like there was the intent to go at various points that I don't think we'll see from Bosviel. And he's kind of, I think, just he can match him kick for kick, and the drop goal was amazing. And yeah, I think the game manager. The one thing for Grenoble is they had injuries to Georgie Javacchio, who's a big ball carrying second row, Sergio, who Sam Davis referenced as like the big number 8 carrier, and our man Pio Muarua. They were all already injured, and Hardwick got a red card, and Jose Madeira.
So stupid.
Yeah, that was really stupid. Although, how good were Ealing last year? Like, they had him, they had Dan Lancaster. How were they not in the Premiership? Like, and Jose Madeira, who's an absolute stalwart for them in the back row in terms of physicality and tackling, went off in 7 minutes. And I think he was he broke his foot. And I think there was an HIA protocol on someone else as well, the second row. So like Grenoble are going to be without quite a lot of big ball carriers and big bulky men in that back five of the scrum. Certainly the ball carrying. They're already without 3 ball carriers. They're possibly without another 2. That said, they've shown pretty much all season they've got depth across the whole squad, and they've got a lot of physicality in that back line that should be enough for Montauban. I just Montauban, for them to back it up 3 weeks in a row would be phenomenal. It's just that, unchanged squad, they'll probably try and go unchanged again. I just don't think they'll be able to live with the physicality of Grenoble, given that the way they dismantled Provence.
Do we know if a team has ever come from 6th in Pro D2 to get promoted?
I don't know, actually. I have no idea.
Yeah,
I'd be amazed.
Probably not. Yeah, it would be quite something. Anything else on Grenoble?
No, that's it. I was going to say just on Montauban, and we'll phase out this section with the interlude music that we have. You may recognise the tune from the weekend. Have you heard this our interlude over the weekend, Richard?
No.
Because it seems the song Au Vie Lumière, or Tous Ensemble on Chantera, has been co-opted by PSG fans. So apparently it's not a historical PSG song, and I don't think it's a Montauban one, but one of the interludes that we use is live, recorded by me from Stade Sapiac, of the same tune of Tous Ensemble en Chantera, which has been everywhere this weekend. And I've noticed it throughout the Champions League that PSG fans sing it. And it's a good one. It's a good chant. But yeah, I don't know where it's come from or what the connection between Montauban, Paris Saint-Germain, the original song is. But I don't think I've not heard it anywhere else in rugby, but you will hear it presumably in the Pro D2 final this weekend with the Stade Sapiac Ultras. But the one that you hear on our podcast is from Stade Sapiac. Not randomly a PSG chant thrown into our rugby podcast.
It was wild on Saturday night in Bordeaux, however many hundreds of miles from Paris. Like, just, yeah.
Well, one man from Bordeaux that was in Paris to watch it, to go and see his mate Cameron Wacky, was Mathieu Jalabert. He went up, he watched the Racing game, and then teamed up with his old mate Cameron Wacky, and they watched the PSG game together.
Very good. Saw a picture actually of Cameron Wacky with Enriquez.
Really?
About. Yeah, looking very suave, suited and booted, Monsieur Wacky.
Nice.
Before we go on to the top 14, shout out our team we have a real soft spot for, the Lac. Bat the Lac, and they will. Well, they didn't really work for a while, did it? But it worked this time. They prevailed pretty comfortably over Chambéry at the Stade Savoie, something like that.
Stade de Savoie,
which looks really cool.
But in Elgin's article the other week about Chambéry, that was due to be called the Stade des Elephants, which was just, as he points out, cruelly changed to just the boring old Stade de Savoie. I think Stade des Elephants would have been amazing.
Had a nightmare, but brilliant news for Aurillac. Brilliant news for fans of sort of less established international sides. And apparently it's their 19th consecutive year in the second tier, which is quite extraordinary, given they famously always have the lowest or second lowest budget. Brilliant news for them and us, because very keen to get out there at some point into Cantal. Okay, we'll touch this on top 14 in just a moment. Okay, Rob, so I'll be honest with you, despite being in France, my experience of the top 14 this weekend was largely watching a little bit of the CAS game when I got to my hotel, B, having to desperately needing the loo and therefore stopping off in a pub that we've seen on many occasions but had never been in, I don't think, the Connemara in Bordeaux. So nipped in there, saw a little bit of Toulouse-Lyon, which was incredibly one-sided and pretty dull. And then also, which I know we're going to go on to in a bit of detail in just a moment, but seeing the score at half-time, Stade Francais leading at Clermont, thinking, my prediction that backs to the wall, Stade Francais are going to pull it out of the bag is looking good here, before probably the implosion of the season, as I was sat waiting for a train at Saint-Emilion with 80 Chinese tourists. So I'm going to need you to kind of take us through this. But what did you get? What did you get to see?
getting quite good at the old implosion, aren't they, Stade Francais?
Getting better, it would seem.
Getting better, yeah. As I said, I tweeted, which I was hoping maybe I was in cricket mode and the kind of crossover between English cricket fans and French rugby fans isn't quite what I assumed. But yeah, better at collapsing than the English cricket team of the 90s. So I'm talking of cricket, I watched this while we were playing, well, not while we were playing cricket. I watched the first half and then I was about to go out to bat. I was incorrectly given run out, but I'd kind of missed the start of the second half as I've kind of been batting, watching the end of our innings, getting dressed, getting my tea, and turned on at 70 minutes, 65 minutes or something. And I was like, oh, wow, it's 34-20, having been 17-6 at half-time to Stade Francais. And the last 15 minutes are an absolute rout. It is like white flags everywhere from Stade Francais. It was pathetic. I have now since watched the intervening 25 minutes. It was pretty close up at, well, no, not really. I think it was 20 all at about 55 minutes. And the fact that they then ran out 55-20. Yeah, it was 17-6 at halftime, which is, I think, the kind of key part of this. The first half was not a thing of great beauty, which in hindsight was probably quite predictable between these two sides. But Stade Francais looked like the Stade Francais of last year. They had Ward and Marchand in the centres. They looked really organised. They were kind of matching Clermont physically. The defence looked really good. Clermont didn't look like they had any invention in attack. And the Marchand try came from a kind of mistake, kind of classic, kind of early Saracens kind of, or when Saracens got good, that kind of like kick and we'll pounce on a mistake sort of thing. And it all looked pretty good, like 17-6 up at half time, looking organised, Clermont lacking ideas, etc. And it was cliche. I don't know what Uriel said to them at half time, but whatever he said, it worked. But they were just way better than Stade Francais in the second half. Clermont looked so much better at every aspect, and it was forward carrying and pretty simple stuff at times. But Stade Francais just looked crap. Yeah, okay, Clermont are a physical side, but when you've got guys just one-out runners or relentless carrying, and it just looked like they were making ground, and they did play well, but yeah, they were just running riot by the end. It was completely one-sided that second half, and some real warning signs for Stade Francais, given how they folded in that second half. That said, the best player on the pitch, and a player that I've been quite sceptical about this season, after some brilliant hype last year, Baptiste Jeannot was phenomenal. I think there's one try of the 7 or whatever, or 8 that Clermont scored that he wasn't the key person, key instrumental person in. And he was part of the build-up for that anyway. But which I guess he's a 9, but he sparked most of the tries almost single-handedly, particularly, I mean, the one at the end that kind of made the top 5 from Foysac was a chip, and it was a loose ball at the end. Kind of summed up where Stade Francais were at the end. It's literally like turnover, really easy, chips over the top, there's no one there, he picks it up and it's just a stroll in. It could have passed it to about 3 different people. But he was at his best, which is really nice to see from a young player that promised a lot, kind of has been overtaken by Bézi again. Don't know whether he had a few injuries or whatever, but Bézi seemed to be the man. Jeannot played full 80. He was the best player on the pitch. Brilliant. Great to see. Shout out also to Peter Gus-Suakula, who carried a lot in the first half and didn't really get anywhere, which summed up the Stade Francais defence. But second half, him and Jeannot were just working really well together. Load of carrying, really active, pretty much involved in every play. Scored his first try in top 14, which, given that we saw the end of Fritz Lee, or they said their goodbyes to Fritz Lee, is quite a good sign for Clermont. Trying to think, Benjamin
They've got
Erdebajeta.
Pio coming in.
And they've got Pio coming in. Oh, yeah, the one try with Delgy, there was a brilliant bit of play from Delgy and Newsom for the Newsom try. Delgy's pace was like absolutely burns Leicester Etienne. Benjamin Erdebajeta came the highest scorer in top 14 history. And we'll come on to a little bit of a mini quiz on that, Richard. But he did look, some of the early shots of him from his career at Oyonnax, he looks old, but also nothing like Benjamin Erdebajeta. Like, it's kind of really weird. He looked old as a youngster, but not quite the full distressed maitre d' of an Argentine steak restaurant that he looks now. Yeah, well done, Clermont. Clermont hold the key to the next rounds, I guess. Stade Francais are not out the woods. Actually, I'll touch on that now, given it makes sense. So, in terms of next week, Clermont, well, relegation-wise, Stade Francais have the edge on the head-to-head over USAP, but Van have the edge on the head-to-head over Stade, and USAP have the edge of the head on the head-to-head against Van. So if they are all tied on points, I don't know what happens. I think it comes down to best overall points differential and then best try differential, and Stade are ahead on those. So I don't think Stade can, if there's a three-way tie, Stade will not be in the relegation zone. So some sort of positivity. They're also playing at home next week. Clermont are currently not in the top 6, but they are 3 points behind La Rochelle, 4 points behind Castres, and 5 points behind Bayonne. They are ahead. They win the head-to-head over all 3 of those teams.
Is that on what points difference?
It's match point, like league points, as it were.
Okay.
From the head-to-heads. Then it's, so obviously quite a lot of them are like one team wins at home without a bonus point, the other team wins at home without a bonus point. It is then points differential, like aggregate score between those games. Then it goes to try differential, I think, in those games. And then you go on to kind of overall league points.
Got you.
But Clermont are ahead of Castres, Bayonne, and La Rochelle on the head-to-head. They're way ahead of Castres on the head-to-head. They absolutely dicked them
away,
Michelin, which is interesting. So that kind of bodes well for Clermont, who do go away to Montpellier, but Montpellier also did quite well this weekend, and they, we'll come on to that in a bit. But Clermont, generally relatively positive, I think. Anything on Clermont?
Nope.
Sad. Castres,
Nothing.
you mentioned you saw them. They were the better team by miles. Bayonne were rubbish, despite sending a really strong side. Castres dusted them physically up front. Last game for Julien Demora, more than likely at the Stade Pierre Fabre. We'll come on to that in a minute. But he basically did everything other than score a try. He got so close to scoring a try on his final home game a number of times and just didn't quite, kind of knocked it on, or didn't quite fall for him and stuff like that. But he did play very, very well, which was good to see, kind of a man on his last appearance in front of that crowd. Because he was nominated for the year that Ben Botica won. He was nominated for Player of the Year, wasn't he? And key part of the 2018 winning Castres side. I think he scored a try in the final when they beat Montpellier. But Castres looking pretty good. They are still in 5th, which would mean an away game if there is no movement, but they are 1 point behind Bayonne, so there is a chance. Bayonne, which I don't know what was going on, they just look so disjointed. They just look completely off the pace. They didn't look like them at all. Elsewhere, looking down the bottom, the key game, as we called out, Van versus Pau. My boys, 50 up. I think it was the biggest away score or biggest away margin of victory for Pau since 2004 or something.
Wow.
But a last minute or clock in the red try for Tom Southerby meant that they also got the bonus point, which was actually quite soft. It was quite clearly like a fresh young player coming on against quite a tired defence. Van did score 4 tries of their own, which is quite good. But key players here, Gaetan looked absolutely amazing. Could have scored a hat-trick. There was a slight knock-on in the build-up to one of his tries. He looked amazing. Browbury looked pretty tidy. Maddox looked good. Back first start in a while, I think. Atasogbe, obviously a legend. Joe Simmons kicked all conversions, which is why the scoreline looks so stretched out, because it's only like a 3-try difference, but it looks quite big, 52-26. Poe looking good. Did all right up front against Van as well. So, yeah, it was quite competitive for most of that game. Or half-time, it was 12-17, but Poe eventually kind of ran away with it.
Slightly beleaguered Van missing a few key men.
Yeah, no Francis Saïli, which we've said they're a different team without him, but they also missed Gorison and Rayasi. Ruru was back on the bench. I don't know whether any of those guys are going to be back for the final game away at Bordeaux, but you don't hold out much hope, especially if they don't have Saïli. No. I think he's the real key. Well, Gorison as well makes so many tackles. And then the other beleaguered side, Perpignan lost 38-15 away at La Rochelle, which was actually pretty close for quite a lot of this game. It was 17-15 at one point. Perpignan's scrum kept them in the game, which is quite impressive to say against La Rochelle, but looked like they kind of ran out of steam, and by the end, La Rochelle were had plenty in the tank. Their last try is proper La Rochelle, Dante through the middle and looking absolutely rapid. which you don't say that often. Dylan Lays looked good. 2 tries for Tuarca Barlow on his final game at the Marcel de Flandre for La Rochelle before he moves to Stade Francais. He looked really good. But yeah, La Rochelle looked pretty good. Other than the odd struggle up front in the scrum, all of Perpignan's points came from the boot of Tommy Allen. So again, not creating too many opportunities.
There were a lot of, you mentioned Kerr Barlow there. There were a lot of kind of send-offs, weren't there, this weekend? You mentioned Demora as well. Le Garec in the game. There was quite a few presentation ceremonies and what have you taking place, understandably.
Have you seen the Dumora one in the changing room?
No, I haven't. No.
They basically got like a proper musician, like an actual musician with like an accordion and a microphone, and they're like singing songs. But Dumora's just like, they're all in a circle, and Dumora's just in the middle of their circle. They all seem to be singing along. So I didn't know I didn't recognize the song, but it looked really cool. Have you seen the Tuarca Barlow one?
I have, yeah, with West and Antonio and Skelton, was it? Doing a hacker?
Doing a hacker for him. And he was welling up as well. That looked quite cool. I should say Racing lost at home in their last home game to Montpellier, which is actually a pretty bad result for them. That means they have nothing to play for this weekend. Montpellier can't make the top 6, but they can make the Champions Cup. But that brings us on, Richard, to my mini quiz. It's going to be very quick. I want to know, name the clubs in Europe that these retiring players have played for. You'll understand why it's Europe because there's one non-French player, but the rest are all in France.
Okay.
Name the 4 clubs in Europe that Benjamin Erdepageta has played for.
You mentioned one of them earlier, so it'd be Oyonnax, Cast, Clermont, and
this is what sparked this quiz because I had no idea this happened. He played before he moved to Oyonnax. He played for a club in England.
In England?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a guess at either Bath or Quins.
He between 2010 and 2012, he played at Harlequins.
Did he really?
Yeah, amazing.
Wow.
For a bonus question,
wow.
He's played in France for 13 seasons. How many of them has he been coached by Christophe Urios?
Oh, wow. 6? Just under
9.
Half? 9?
Yeah.
Wow.
3 years at Oyonnax, 4 at Cast, 2 at Clermont. Shows
like
that
Harry Redknapp
and Crouchy.
Crouchy.
I've said this before. It's Sam Allardyce and Kevin Nolan, isn't it? Like,
wow. 9 of those seasons. That's remarkable. Okay.
Name the 4 clubs that Julien Dumora has played for in France.
Cast, Bordeaux.
No.
No?
No.
I feel like I know a couple of these. Did he play for Biarritz?
No. You were in the right department with Biarritz. Pyrénées-Atlantiques.
Did he play for Po?
He did play for Po. Started at Po.
I did not know that. And where else might have played? Like on your way through somewhere. Did he play in Pro DT?
No.
He's
got nearly 514 appearances, yeah. Po, 2006-2011.
Lyon?
He was at Lyon for a couple of years before Cast, and he was at Toulon for a season before Lyon.
Okay.
Can you name the 4 clubs that Brice Dulin has played for in France?
Okay. La Rochelle, obviously.
Yeah.
Racing.
Yeah, you should get who he was at before Racing.
Stade? Why should I get it? Is there a reason? Or why would I know that?
Your boys.
I'm thinking. He was at Cast, was he?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
And then he started at...
Somewhere
quite near Cast, relatively.
Like a top 14 club again?
Not currently.
Ooh.
Certainly have been in history.
Yeah, like an Argent, somewhere like that?
Argent, yeah. Okay, can you name 5, although there's one that's low down, 5 clubs that Camille Lopez has played for in France?
Okay.
I'll give you the first one. He had a season at Morlion, which is now National 2, I think.
Morlion,
which is where he's from.
Okay, so Bayonne.
Yeah.
Clermont.
Yeah.
Bordeaux.
Yeah. He had a season somewhere between Bordeaux and Clermont, which is tough. I didn't know this. Current top.
Who haven't I said? What other club have I not thrown out there? I've thrown out Stade Francais.
You've not
thrown out some other wrong ones. Perpignan.
Correct.
Yeah.
He did a season
not a clue. Just okay.
He's done pretty well there. I think so. That's 4 retiring legends. I think there might be more next week, but 4 legends of French rugby.
Do all of them have a little theme there where they've had like one off-piste season? Just some like slightly random spot.
Yeah, slightly. Although I wouldn't call Toulon 2011 to 2012 that random for Julien Dumora. They were quite good then. But yeah, there you go.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Hard work that, but Got a couple
I think
of them.
you've done pretty well, though.
Do we? You've kind of spoken a little bit about the state of play in the top four teams. Are there any others you want to before the final reckoning this weekend?
No, I feel like Toulouse are a bit of an also-ran team this weekend. It feels they feel very background all of a sudden, which is weird to say. I don't know. I feel like I've kind of forgotten about Toulouse. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Leon, like, who
Given
are
up.
they? They've like,
They
who out for
flickered.
the
They burned
season.
brightly at one point, but
They're almost certain to finish 11th, I think, which is, well done them. They've got nothing to play for.
The only game we haven't mentioned was a very hungover Bordeaux going to Toulon and losing as expected. I watched a little bit of this, and the only thing of note that kind of happened that did make me laugh was Robbie Knock on commentary. Mathieu Bastereau was in the stand.
Yeah.
And he said, there he is, like the team manager, family man, Mathieu Bastereau. So I remember he said words to the effect of, I remember when he was at Stade Francais, when he wasn't a family man, enjoying life in the French capital. Which,
wow,
remember, there was a loaded statement. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I know we're hoping to get Robbie on at some point, but they just cracked me up. It was such a good line.
Well, I have another bit of beautiful commentary from Robbie Knott, which kind of is top 14, kind of could go in the Petit-Fours.
Okay.
We mentioned the other week, and he came off the bench this week, the young loose head prop for Clermont, Matteo Frissac, 19-year-old. Now, his girlfriend, his prospective father-in-law, is someone in French rugby. He is a loose head prop for Clermont. If you're a loose head prop for Clermont, who would you want your prospective father-in-law to be? Who would be your ideal person or not ideal person to be the father of your girlfriend?
I'm trying to think of a legendary Clermont prop who would be, like 50? I'd tell me.
It's not David Zirakashvili. People would be screaming legendary loose-head prop, David Zirakashvili. His girlfriend is the daughter of Christophe Urios.
Wow.
Now, there's two sides to this for me. Number one, I fundamentally think Christophe Urios is a fantastic bloke. Like, he's got his own vineyard. Just imagine that. Like you've met the potential love of your life. She invites you home to hers, and it's Christophe Urios, barbecue around the Urioses. The wine is flowing. He's a very welcoming man. You're like, this is great. On the flip side, surely one of the more terrifying potential father-in-laws anywhere, let alone when you play for Clermont and in French rugby generally. But the dark side of Christophe Urios, I imagine, is that's not a hairdryer treatment you want to receive. The other question I've got for you, Richard, is do we think this is French rugby nepotism taken to another level?
Ooh,
has he got it? He actually seems like quite a good player, which is 19-year-old loosehead, fair play. But is this nepotism?
I hope so.
Which we don't know which came first, whether
true.
he met the daughter and then became a Clermont prop, or he was a Clermont prop and then met the daughter, which is slightly more rogue if he's like gone round to because I know Urios like hosts barbecues and stuff like for the players, like bonding sessions. If he's gone round there and then started macking on the daughter, that's a little bit offside.
Or maybe he thinks he's a fine young gentleman and would be a great partner for his daughter and introduce them.
Yeah.
There is that.
Or Urios has hosted a Clermont barbecue. He's there with the girlfriend and it's all got a bit loose. And as part of like the shenanigans, he's had a kind of chicken scratch against Regis Montagne and done a job. And Christophe Urios has been like, blimey, my daughter's boyfriend could do a job in the front row. And he's been signed there and then. Who knows?
On the spot, yeah.
More to follow on this hot news topic. I think we'll do some digging.
Yeah, it'll be the first couple of French rugby. I'm all for this. Okay, shall we come back to some Petit-Fours to round out? Okay, Rob, the first thing I was going to discuss in the Petit-Fours very briefly was that I went to I told you about the Fédéral 2 match between Merignac and Cahors. Cahors travelled in big numbers. I think mentioned it was Gaeton's club, clearly a decent following. Yeah, fabulous time. If anyone's ever out in Bordeaux, and wants to watch a game of rugby on a Sunday, very easy to get to. Jump off the tram.
How far?
Great
Yeah, how far
atmosphere.
from the centre? Because it's near the airport, right?
It's about 30 minutes, 35 minutes on the tram from kind of the city centre. Wicked stadium, massive stands. It was rammed as well. I reckon there were 1,500 people.
It's massive. I thought, bear in mind, it's Fédéral 2, which is what GOP were in when I went there, which was kind of a small, kind of quite cute municipal stadium. That looked like a proper stadium.
Yeah, big athletics track. Some sand pits for your long jump if you wanted to do that at half time. But yeah, just a brilliant atmosphere. Cahors ran out 22-14 winners and probably were the better team. Shout out to big Will Zyber, who was flagged by Reece and Kerry, who had frequented Merignac a few weeks before. He'd been injured and was on the drum, but he was a massive tight head and cult hero. There were big cheers erupting anytime he got near the ball, and he scrummaged pretty well as well. But it was really, really good fun. Beer, £5, bottle of wine, €10. Duck Brett baguette, €4. Just simple fare, lovely people, highly recommended.
Oh, sorry, I'm just doing some research on Cahors. Their logo now is basically looks like a kind of medieval chateau or like a medieval citadel, doesn't it? They did have one with some grapes on it. Can you see that?
That's cool. Yeah.
That's cool because as I mentioned last week, is a wine. They're a very historic club. They won the Championnat de France deuxième division, so what was presumably now Pro D2 in 1955. Challenge de l'Espérance a few times. I'm trying to find some old emblematic players. David already.
They travelled in. Actually, once went on holiday to Cahors.
Oh wow! Abdul Benazir played for Cahors.
Well, there you go. It didn't surprise me. It was clearly a bigger following than you'd expect, given the distance and the level. And they had loads of them had phase finale, stash on, proper setup. Few coaches. Yeah, very, very cool. But yeah, I would definitely go back to Merignac. Would highly recommend to anyone looking for an extra game of rugby in Bordeaux.
You mentioned the duck baguette there. We didn't ask food at the ground at Stade Amédée-Domenech.
I just had a merguez. The queues were vast before the game, and then saw my opportunity at half time.
You didn't have
but very nice. The burger like last time, which was outstanding with the little spuds.
On your trip, generally, any fun in-ground drinks? Yeah,
no, just that was the extent of it. One thing I haven't, I kind of did, but not in any detail, was that do try and visit Périgueux. Absolutely beautiful place, incredible market on a Saturday morning, just very civilized, very pretty, very cool place.
Presumably in Bordeaux, the party continued and it was all, partying in the streets for the Elite 1 Feminine victory.
Yeah.
Of Stade Bordelais, which is, I'm going to say it's a different club to UBB because it is. So I don't think it's a
there is an affiliation that I think.
Well, UBB became Stade Bordelais, but there is a Stade Bordelais that still exists lower down in the men's, I think. But yeah, they beat Toulouse in the final of Elite.
They're third on the spin, I think.
I think it's something like that, yeah. And they echoed the Marco Gazzotti kind of ski goggles sliding across the floor as well, which was quite good to see. Talking of wins,
I find the ski goggles thing a bit boring now, I'll be honest. I think it was funny 5 years ago.
But if you're doing a slip and slide at a camera, I think that's quite fair. Talking of league victories, but this has nothing to do with French rugby. Did you see that Rovigo beat Viadana? So Rovigo, who we saw, they beat Viadana in Parma in Serie A Elite. Actual proper trips. Harry Rogers, shout out our listener who went to Grenoble. He was very panicked that he wasn't going to be in Grenoble for the actual game when it looked like they were going to finish second. But luckily they did get that big win at home and they did finish top and they were able to go to the Stade des Alps for the semi-final, which looked absolutely epic. He got some amazing photos of the stadium with the Alps in the background. They had the post-match kind of crowd surfing to Peña Bayona, which we love to see. Great. Keep them coming if you are going to games. We love seeing your photos. We love hearing about them. I hope, Harry, you got some Grenoble stash, given that I'm wearing this jumper. You said the shop was shut. Anything else, Richard?
No. The only other things that caught my attention briefly this morning was that some sort of deal or agreement's been struck that maybe a few of the top 14 finalists might make it to New Zealand. But I think that's the extent of
They're
it.
going to be capped at 2,000 minutes, though. So that will rule out LBB and Damian Penaud. Don't know who else would fall foul of that 2,000 minutes. I reckon someone like Aldrit and actually, no, because they're not even going to be in it, are they? I think it's just the 2,000 minutes thing if they are going to the finals. So it's probably like a Miafu maybe, or
possibly.
But that is cool that we might see, like Entrées won't have 2,000 minutes, which means that we might see Entrées. Trying to think who else we might see that we might not have done anyway. Francois Cross must have played 2,000 minutes, and he'll be in the final. That's a shame, but it should be a pretty good. And also with no LBB and Penaud, we know who's going to be on the wing. The future record try scorer for France, Théo
Moustan.
Arthur Vincent is the answer to that one. A couple of, talking of wingers, Juta Wanakolo, who only scores wonder tries and including one wonder try against Bordeaux this weekend. He's off to Lyon till 2028. Replacement, feels like quite a fitting replacement for Rapid David, that. Other Rapid wingers, Maroš Tambwe is rumoured to Stade Francais. He's not had barely any game time at Montpellier this season. Talking of Montpellier, Jan Serfontaine is leaving. But do you see the exciting news yesterday? That
Montpellier, I don't think so.
Montpellier are rumoured to be signing Rapeni Junior Thautau Nabuka, who is 19 and can do 100 metres in 11.02 seconds. So for all the crap that Montpellier have done of signing terrible people, we know that Rapeni Senior has a checkered one. But if there's a signing to bring a smile to the faces of French fans. Talking of kind of left field signings, I saw a thing on YouTube from Morgan Turanui, who does a lot of commentary in Australia, talking about Nathan Cleary, who, for those that aren't nerds like me that watch NRL, he's kind of been the front and centre main man of Penrith Panthers in the NRL in their 3 in a row, possibly 4 in a row. He started off kind of like, I always thought he was a bit of an Owen Farrell type, kind of very structured, but he's basically turned himself into Owen Farrell plus Finn Russell plus Johnny Sexton. And there was Morgan Turanui was talking about a potential transfer to Union because he's basically completed, even though he's in like 25, 26, he completed rugby league, and whether a club in Europe would sign him. That interests me. I think Racing could be quite cool. That could be, it's a weird one because Racing love a headline signing, and that kind of is and isn't. Because I think aren't they signing Joey Manu as well, who actually has at least played in Union, but he was amazing in rugby league, but he's actually at least played in Union. But yeah, give us a shout. Who would you like to see in top 14, or it'd be top 14 to sign Nathan Cleary, basically the best player in rugby league? Who would you like in the top 14 to sign them? Elsewhere in Paris, somehow Paul Gustard is rumoured to be signing an extension to 2028. Which seems bizarre given the current state of affairs.
I'm all for continuity and nothing knee jerk, but it's surprising. Seems to go against the the pattern that you would expect, having had a season as poor as they have. But
in other longevity news, Nance Duquang has announced his candidacy for Mayor of Bordeaux for 2026. So hashtag, what are we saying there? Hashtag ND 2026. Yeah, the homework, Richard. Who would I pay $250,000 to look like? Obviously, the main answer was obviously Charles Olivon. But I thought that's a little bit too, like, as much as I'd love to look like Charles Olivon, it's going to look a bit weird on a chubby bloke that's like 5'11". So I thought I kind of went down the money making route, like basically earn back the $250,000. Possibly Johnny Wilkinson. I think that would be quite good. Possibly Antoine Dupont to kind of,
so you can sort of go in disguise as someone.
Yeah, so because like all these body doubles get loads of money, don't they? Like if you could be like a lookalike for Johnny Wilkinson, think of the gigs that you could get in advertising and hen-dos.
Yeah.
Who would you go for?
I'll be honest, I hadn't given it any thought. I was going to say the obvious one is surely Olivon. Like you'd just be sorted, wouldn't you?
The guy that looked like Nonu, he said that women were throwing themselves at him. I think if you look like Charles Olivon, even on our measly physiques, the non-Adonis physique of Charles Olivon, I think you'd probably still do quite well. Because obviously, you're married, I've got a girlfriend. That's not our main aim, Richard. We don't need to have women throwing themselves at us.
Just want to look good.
You'd look good at least.
I was thinking if there's like just someone. No, I'll tell you what. I'll think about it for next week. We'll come back to it.
Part of me thought of like going for someone that would get a load of image rights that would attract zero attention from the public. And I stumbled upon Dorian Aldegheri, which I think would be quite jokes. Just look exactly like Dorian Aldegheri.
John Merkler.
Mate, I think I'm going there anyway. I don't need. I guess the homework for next week is who would you want as your father-in-law? In which French rugby personality would you want as your father-in-law? It's going to take Crystal Furious. Going to take some beating. I have to say. I think he'd be amazing. Pierre Mignoni is the obvious other one. I think Mignoni's son does think there's a Mignoni son somewhere. Okay. I don't know whether he's got a girlfriend, but yeah. Who are the prospective father-in-laws that you'd want? Give us a shout. I think that's a fun one. But we'll be back next week and we can finally do our review of Pro D2. Richard, team of the season.
Yes.
Look at our predictions, etc.
Yeah, extraordinary that Pro D2 is wrapping up. I've got the final this Saturday, isn't it? Stade Amédée-Domenech.
Yeah, 4:30.
Grenoble, Montauban, which is incredibly exciting. So yeah, we'll be back to discuss that. Final round of the top 14 ahead of the barrage. Probably a few other bits as well. I think from memory, I think I said Nice were going to make the barrage, which hasn't aged particularly well. But then again, thought Montauban were going to come 15. So been a wild ride, but we'll go through it all in detail next week.
The top 14
in the meantime,
it's going to be an absolute nightmare for that.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter fundamentally. Do get in touch via socials at Rosbif Rugby. Email us at rosbifrugby@gmail.com. Love hearing your tales. And in the meantime, enjoy the rugby on the horizon. Enjoy the start of summer, and we'll see you next week. I've been Richard. That's been Rob. We have been Rosbif Rugby. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Prescription products require completion of an online medication consultation with an independent healthcare provider through the LifeMD platform and are only available if prescribed. Subscription required. Individual results may vary. Additional restrictions apply at lifemd.com. Read all warnings before using GLP-1s. Side effects may include a risk of thyroid C-cell tumors. Do not use GLP-1s if you or your family have a history of thyroid cancer.
Should GLP-1 weight loss medication like Wegovy and Zepbound cost thousands of dollars? We don't think so. TryLifeMD.com helps provide insurance access to the leading GLP-1 medications. Visit TryLifeMD.com and check your eligibility for GLP-1 medication with copays as low as $0. Listen to Bridget's story after losing 55 pounds and using her insurance for coverage.
LifeMD helped me get covered with my insurance. Finding out that it was covered was huge. I've lost 55 pounds. I am so much healthier now that I've lost the weight. I would never be able to do it without them.
Get started today and check your eligibility for GLP-1 medication with copays as low as $0 at TryLifeMD.com. That's TryLifeMD.com.